Good morning. I'm Christy Hankins. I'm an assistant county attorney with the county attorney's office, and I've been assigned to assist this board. With me is Becca. Say your last name? I'm sorry. I might want to spell it.
Zuch. It's S-Z-U-C-H.
There we go. So before you already have the agenda. We've put out forms in the back so that if anybody came in and wanted to speak, they could fill out those forms and they would have a time on the agenda to speak. Looking in the room and no forms have been filled out, I would say that we don't have anyone here that wants to address the public forum. When you look at your agenda, the first thing you'll see on there is that we do the call to order, and I have that form for you. Since we don't have a chairperson yet, I'll go ahead and read the call to order into the record. But you'll be handling that. Whoever ends up being chairperson will handle that as we go forward. Please turn your cell phone to the vibrate, silence, or off setting. The Opioid Abatement Funding Advisory Board allows any person to speak regarding an item on the agenda. The speaker is limited to 2 minutes unless otherwise determined by the chairperson to allow sufficient time for all speakers. Speakers shall refrain from abusive or profane remarks, disruptive outbursts, protests, or other conduct which interferes with the orderly conduct of the meeting. Upon completion of the public comment period, discussion is limited to board members and questions raised by the board. And then the next item is on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. The flag is behind you. The next item on the agenda, whoever ends up being chairperson, you would request whether or not the meeting has been advertised. Can you go to that? And since your assistant to the board isn't here, I will let you know it has been advertised. It's up on the board. It was advertised in the Sun Press. We move on to the election of the chair and the vice chair. I realize that several of you don't know each other. You may have just met this morning. So if you could take a moment, I'm going to explain a couple things to you, and then if you could just take a moment to introduce yourself on the record. I know you already know to speak into the mic, but also make sure your mics are turned on and live. So if we could start at this end.
Good morning. My name is Irvin Williams. I currently work for Lakeview Center and have for a number of years, dating back to 1976, working in substance abuse and mental health services. What other information would be helpful?
That's fine. I appreciate it.
Good morning, Tommy White. I don't know why I went blank, but my wife and I, we own a couple of small business. We one of the most things that we do in the community, we work with a lot of youth. Right now, I sit on the board for Escambia County East Pensacola Student Athletic Association, where we deal with over 200 plus youth. And I sit on a couple other boards, the Eastside Redevelopment Board and another Citizen Advisory Board here in Escambia County. So hopefully that experience with the youth will actually be helpful in the abatement process.
And I apologize, I should have let everyone know, Dr. Irvin Williams was a CDAC appointee, and Mr. White is a city council appointee. You may not know who appointed you to this board, but that's
yes.
Okay. I have the list in case you're not sure how you got here. Okay. And moving on, I believe it's Matt Enfinger?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Good morning. Matt Enfinger. I've been in law enforcement for about 16 years here in the county and now currently in state law enforcement. I'm on the Gulf Coast Kids House Board. I volunteer coaching baseball and football, youth athletics with my son. And looking forward to this.
Thank you. John Mathis?
My name is John Mathis. I've been retired from Pensacola Police Department for about 12 years now. I've served 32 years. Served on CDAC board probably the last 15 years of my tenure down there, as well as other boards. AMI Kids Pensacola. Like I said, several other boards throughout the years, and I'm appointed by the mayor.
Thank you. And then Catherine White?
I'm Kathy White. I work for Court Administration. I'm the Director of Case Management Services, also over specialty courts, Veterans Court, Drug Court, Mental Health Court.
And you were the county administrator appointee, correct?
Yes.
And I apologize, I don't recall if you announced it, but the BCC appointment was Matt Enfinger. And do you prefer Matt or Matthew?
Matt?
All right, we'll
Thank
keep
you.
it straight. So part of the reason, so what we're going to do today, and we'll do again in October, is we're required to appoint a chairperson. You're required to vote for a chairperson and a vice chairperson. But according to the rules that the board has set up, the Board of County Commissioners has set up, that is an election that actually occurs in October. But since we're having our meeting in September, this will be an interim vote, an interim election, just so you can run things today. I know a lot of it will be presentation. There won't be much of, but the chairperson will be responsible for moving us through this process for the rest of the day. Not the rest of the day. We're going to try to keep it to a couple hours, if that. So, so you can choose who you want to vote. You can just, one person, you can nominate, and then you can vote as you like. Anybody want to make any nominations?
Yes, I'd like to make a nomination. I'd like to nominate the former Chief of Police, Mr. John Mathis, as a chairperson.
Okay.
He has a lot of experience, and so I think he'll bring that experience.
Are there any other nominations? If there's no other nominations for chairperson, is everyone ready to vote? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same. Seeing none opposed, John Mathis will be your interim chairperson until next month, where he may have that duty permanently if it's chosen by the board. Going forward, then, we would need to elect the vice chairperson, and I will leave that with you, Chairperson Mathis.
Okay. Kind of rusty on these Robert's Rules of Order. It's been years since I've done this, but we'll limp through this, at least this meeting. Any nominations for the vice chair?
I nominate Ms. Kathy White as vice chair.
I second. Any other nominations? All right, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, Kathy, congratulations. You've been volunteered.
Going forward, we have the public forum.
Public forum, as mentioned before, I see no one in the audience and no one's filling out a card, so moving on to presentation and discussion of the handbook.
All right. If I may. Let me go to page, the first thing, yeah. So what we've done is prepared a bound notebook for the board's reference. This will be just guidelines to help you understand in case you have questions. It'll be a place for you to refer back as you go through and make further decisions that you want to be included in the bound handbook. And I'm just going to borrow yours real quick. You can see the binding. We can take these apart and add something in there if the board, when you reach which meetings you want to have, your bylaws, those types of things, we can get these back from you. If you make any notes in them, we just need to make sure you've marked them clearly so we can give them back to you. But we can always add things with this binding so you have something convenient to follow, okay? So we're just going to flip through it quickly, just so you have familiarity with it. The first thing is going to be the Florida Opioid Allocation and Statewide Response Agreement, and that's between the Department of Legal Affairs and Escambia County. So this breaks down all the things that let me get in my book, which is not as convenient as your book. I don't know what information you received before you were appointed to this board, but as you know, there's been a large opioid settlement between multiple states and drug companies. And so that's where this legislation has come out of, and this agreement that's before you. It lays out what local governments are, what qualified counties are, Escambia County does qualify as a county. We do have a task force, and that is CDAC. And then it goes through and breaks out all the requirements, the reporting and records that are required to be kept. And as you go through it, it talks about any kind of agreement management, governing laws and venue, and those types of things. So that's what got all of this started, is that initial document. If you look just beyond that, for you, it's just go to the next set of blue pages. We tried to use that as a divider. You'll see the Schedule A. Schedule A is the core strategies that are to be followed. So you get to choose, you will be choosing from these and determining, you'll hear presentations, you'll invite investigations, those types of things, and you'll look through these and decide how this applies into our core strategies and which projects need to be put forward to the board for expenditures. Expenditures will be handled by the Board of County Commissioners. So once this board makes decisions as to their recommendations, those would go before the Board of County Commissioners for expenditures. And there's a whole thing in the bidding process. But that's for when Ms. Arroyo is back, okay? Just so you know, no money has come in yet. We're watching for it to come in. None of the settlement money has been received as of this morning that I'm aware of. When I know something, then I'll communicate with Ms. Arroyo and she'll communicate with you. Then under Schedule B, which is the next set of blue pages, you'll see those are approved uses. So you've got your core strategies and your approved uses for your review and for items for consideration. And then the next thing is marked under the next two blue pages is considered Exhibit C. And Exhibit C is just the breakdown of how the county percentages will receive it. It may not be in, if it's not in your book, we'll get that out to you. Is that the only thing that's not? We'll get out a new A and B. I didn't realize that didn't get in the first book, so we'll get them out to you. If you haven't made any notes in your books today, we'll go ahead and get them back and get them updated. The next thing you'll see under item number 2 is going to be the Escambia County Task Force opioid plan. That was something that was required for our county to present to the state for the purposes of becoming a qualified county. Number 3 is going to be the interlocal, is it interlocal or 4? Is the resolution of the Board of County Commissioners. This basically lays out all the it lays out all the requirements for you as a board of the things that you're going to be required to know about, how things will have to be run. It lays out your duties. It lays out the duties of the chairperson, how often you have to meet, what a quorum and voting is required, which in this case is the majority of appointed members constitute a quorum, and all matters shall be decided by a majority vote. You are on this team for a term of office for 2 years. And there are special layouts for when if there's a 3 or more total absences, excused or unexcused, during the calendar year, you could recommend removal of an individual on the board. Locations of meetings, you're here, so you found it. I'm very proud of you. Just so you know, I knew you would know what you were doing. The advisory board, the next thing to look at is that, and we're going to go back into this part in details, are the bylaws. That's something that the advisory board will have to recommend. Your board will have to recommend what you want in your bylaws. Then as the attorney assisting you, we'll draw them up and get copies ready, and then Ms. Arroyo will send those out to you. You're not to communicate with each other, but you can make your own notes and reply back. And or if there's something you don't see that you think you need or you'd like to see included, but we'll get a draft. We don't have to have this right now. We can have it at the next meeting, which I will recommend that be in October, since we need to do an election anyway. And then we can work on those bylaws and make sure you have what's required in there, which is the ABCD under 10, and additional things that when we get to that point, we'll talk about it a little closer. And then minutes will be handled, sunshine law, which will have a presentation. There's a discussion here about the procurement and the funding, and I'm going to leave that to Ms. Arroyo to help you with that part. You can have working groups. They will be subject to sunshine law. Working groups allows you to sit as a board and discuss things. It has to be in the public's eye, and public has to be allowed to be present. We would also have a notice requirement under that. We're on number 5. We're on number 4. Okay. Number 4 is the interlocal agreement. That's between Escambia County and the city of Pensacola. It basically lays out several of the items we've already discussed. Number 5 is going to be the competitive bid process. We've put it in here for your review. I expect there may be questions about how that's going to work, and that's why we want to have someone who's very familiar with that, have a conversation in front of the board so that it'll help you get through that. The next thing is number 6. That's going to be the advisor. This is your summary of ethics, sunshine law, and public records requirements. That's basically what we'll go over during my presentation. It's a quick version. There's a lot that we could have put in here, but we want to make sure that you have the highlights and somewhere you can refer back to. Then we also have the Code of Ethics Policy for Escambia County at number 7. Number 8 is going to be voting conflicts. Number 9 is the statewide task force on opioid abuse and their recommendations. We put this in here as a reference point to assist you. I know you all have experience in handling the topic that you're going to have to address, but we wanted to make sure there was something in here just to get the wheels turning in case you needed it. And is that the last one? Okay, so that's the last thing within the book, right? Okay. And I realize I'm telling you number 10 on that, and hold on, my book's falling apart. Where's our agenda? Let me get to the agenda. That completes the presentation of the handbook. Mr. Chairman?
Okay, thank you very much. I have a question, and I'd like to open it up to everybody else. I'm sure the other people on the board probably have some questions, and maybe I'm the only one, but who is coming to make presentation? I mean, I realize is it going to be just the opioid task force that will make recommendations to the board? Or will it be different outside groups, entities? And I don't know who best to answer that question. Or
It'll be done by a bidding process. So we expect that as the funds start to flow in, that there'll be different organizations that want to make presentations in front of the board, and they'll have to follow the bidding process of Escambia County. So let me see, that's number 5 in your book. So any organization that's interested that has that can follow those core strategies, has something to assist in those core strategies, and also the planning under Category B would be allowed, and it would be a bid process.
At this,
go ahead, you have the floor.
at this point, do we know how much is being allotted to the county? I know you mentioned it's not been received as of yet. Do we know how much has been allotted?
I haven't received any numbers yet. I would expect it to be pretty high, surprisingly high. I've heard numbers in the millions, but I can't guarantee that.
Anybody else have questions, please?
Yeah, so the core objective I guess it's already in the name, Opioid Abatement Funding Advisory Board. So these projects and things of that nature are specifically for the abatement process, I guess, on the prevention side and things of that particular nature. So is there a particular scope in which that spans, like a limitation? Because that's pretty broad.
I apologize that these didn't get into your notebooks, and we will add them back. But the core strategies, let me get to that section. Can you pull, oh, you don't have this. So the core strategies include, I'm gonna go through the A, B's, and C's, the highlights.
Is that in our text?
I apologize, I thought it was attached, but it's
Okay.
not. So I'll flip through those for you.
Okay.
It's naloxone or other FDA-approved drug to reverse opioid overdoses, which includes expanding training, increasing distribution to individuals. There's medicated assistant treatment distribution, which includes increased distribution of MAT to non-Medicaid eligible and uninsured individuals. Provide education to school-based and youth-focused programs. Provide MAT education and awareness training to healthcare providers, EMTs, law enforcement, and other first responders. Treatment and recovery support services, such as residential and inpatient treatment, intensive outpatient treatment, outpatient therapy or counseling, and recovery housing. We're gonna print off a copy of this to hand out to the board, and we'll put it into our agenda items so it can be seen by the public. Additionally, there's program for core strategies is pregnant and postpartum women, which expands screening, expand comprehensive evidence-based treatment and recovery services, comprehensive wraparound services. Then there's also expanding treatment for neonatal abstinence syndrome, which expands comprehensive evidence-based and recovery support. Better continuum of care for infant need dyad, and long-term treatment and services for medical monitoring. Addition, there's expansion of warm handoff programs and recovery services, which includes services such as navigators and on-call teams to begin MAT and hospital emergency departments, expand warm handoff services to transition to recovery services, broaden the scope of recovery services to include co-occurring SUD and mental health conditions, provide comprehensive wraparound services to individuals in recovery, including housing, transportation, job placement, training, and childcare, and then hire additional social workers or other behavioral health workers to facilitate expansions. Treatment for incarcerated population, which would provide evidence-based treatment and recovery support, including MAT, for persons with OUD and co-occurring SUD and mental health disorders. Increase funding for jails, prevention programs, to include media campaigns, evidence-based prevention programs in schools, funding for medical provider education, funding for community drug disposal programs, funding and training for first responders. Then finally, expanding syringe service programs, which will include providing comprehensive syringe service programs with more wraparound services, including linkage to OUD treatment, access to sterile syringes, and linkage to care and treatment of infectious diseases, as well as evidence-based data collection and research analyzing the effectiveness of the abatement strategies within the state. So those are the core strategies that we are to address. And those copies for you will be down here in just a moment, and then we'll also post them so that it's open to the public for if they want to review it on our text-only documents. Then also, the Schedule B for the approved uses includes treatment to treat opioid use disorder, support people in treatment and recovery, connect people who need help to the help they need, address the needs of the criminal justice-involved persons, address the needs of pregnant or parenting women and their families, prevent overprescribing and ensure appropriate prescribing and dispensing of opioids, and prevent misuse of opioids, prevent overdose deaths and other harm reduction. And then finally, first responders will be within other strategies. In addition to those items listed, first responders would be to educate law enforcement, provision of wellness and support services for first responders. There'll be leadership, planning, and coordination to support efforts to provide leadership to abate the opioid epidemic through activities, programs, or strategies, training, and research. So those, I know you saw, I turned a lot of the pages. I just started hitting the bold type, or else I may be reading for a while for you. And we'll get those, and we'll get those in your notebooks. And like I said, we'll get those published so that for the public to see. And that's what's going to be before the, so there's a lot of opportunities for different organizations within our community to come forward. And there's going to be a lot of opportunities. CDAC is here to do a presentation today, and it's just going to be on prevention. We anticipate if there's someone that you want to have come in and speak, if there's an organization you think that, not necessarily because they're coming to us for funding, but because you want more information as a board before you, you can always request that either through Ms. Arroyo or to me, and we'll get that person in. We anticipate we're going to have another speaker for you next time. Part of what we're trying to do this is do through this meeting is not only give as much information as we can to the board, but to the public that's also watching.
We have an idea of like how many organizations in our community. I know it's CDAC, you got Lakeview, and there's a number of other, when you speak of the housing part, that actually provide these services already, that's already in motion. We speak of law enforcement, of course, you know, we have those components. So for us, just entities, and it may be a number of them out there that's already providing these services and doing it effectively well.
I don't have that number for you, but I'll look into it for you and see what we can get. I know a number of them did presentations to the Board of County Commissioners recently because of the budget talks we've been having. So I can look into that for you and see what we can come up with. We may be able to get some of them to come on in and do some presentations and line them up for you.
Last thing, this distribution of funds, are we doing this like as it comes in and, you know, or is it just, you know, I know certain fiscal years start October 1, and then it's just kind of like the county has a budget, city has a budget, they do their line items, and then once they have one budget meeting for the year, and then it's kind of like, boom, these funds go out to these different projects. Or is it an ongoing thing throughout the year or throughout these next 2 years where there's different people that can come and then we just kind of like decide, hey, this would be a great organization to do this? Is the bidding process ongoing, or is it like one time and then it's a one-shot deal for the first 2 years?
I'm looking to the notes from the board. I think they gave us some guidance on what was required. If you look into the funding section, it says that it may be used to enhance current programs or develop new programs consistent with the state MOU. Regional funding is not intended to supplant current funding sources. Because the money will be coming in increments, and I would think that we believe it will be coming in with regularity. I haven't seen anything, but I'll look into that for you as to is a one-shot. I don't think we're on a budget as much as we're going to have funding as it flows, may be able to offer more. And we'll go into, and that's part of the procurement process that we'll have to go into and get you some details exactly on how that works. So I'm making a note to make sure we know how the procurement is supposed to be used.
Thank you, Tommy. I think we got to learn to crawl before we can walk with this. I mean, it's all new to me. I read what information was sent out to us prior to the meeting, but still, it's a whole new process, and I've got a lot to learn myself with this going on. One quick question that I have is formal recommendations. I understand presentations by different groups come before us, but formal recommendations, because if we're an advisory board, and we basically get our recommendation, I'm assuming, from the opioid task force. Is that formal recommendation or formal request for monies and programs? Would that come through them to us in presentation form?
I think there's going to have to be an invitation for bids. There's going to have to be an invitation so it can come from different organizations. And what that means is that they'd have to come and do a formal presentation to the board.
But then we make recommendations back to the task force?
That's not the way I understand the function of the task force. If you need to recommend or ask something of them, you can, but if, we're going to have to, and I apologize, the procurement side of this is not my specialty, but I have a feeling it will be soon. And we're going to have to look into that and see exactly how that's going to function. That may be something also that we want to work out on our bylaws. We put into the bylaws as we get these items so that we know exactly how to present these to the board itself.
I guess, thank you for that, but I mean, one of the questions I have is how much authority do we have? Where do our recommendations, they go to the county commission for approval? Is that how? what I'm
Expenditures.
understanding? Yes.
Expenditures go to the county commission for
Okay,
for
so-
approval.
So we listen to presentations from various groups and decide whether we agree that that's something appropriate, and then we make recommendation to the county commission
That's the
on
way.
a funding level, or just, how would that work? I mean, is it?
I didn't understand your funding level.
Well, I don't really understand what I'm asking either.
Okay.
But I'm trying to see, if somebody comes and need X amount of dollars for a program, do we recommend funding at that amount of dollars, or how does that work?
The programs have to be evidence-based, and so you would have to review it and make a decision based on what they're presenting as evidence. So it has to be scientifically based before you can make a recommendation.
Okay.
And we'll work out the procedures for how those presentations need to go before the board.
Okay.
And I apologize, I just don't,
No,
I don't have that answer.
No, I think we're all trying to figure out some things here, but I do have a question, any other board members, if you have any idea of who you would like to get in front of us at the next meeting to educate us better on what our priority is and what direction we're going in. So I don't know if y'all have any questions on that, or any recommendations on who we would like to hear from.
I think we kind of are developing it as we're doing we're doing this. I mean, of course, we get assistance from the county because I think this is so new, and this is like I'm not going to say groundbreaking, but this is kind of groundbreaking abatement board. I know it's probably been done before in other counties, but I think this is kind of like a new legislation. Yeah, I think this is kind of like brand new all over. So I don't know if there's a framework that has a precedence of this. So I think the strategies, what she's laying out here, these are kind of our core direction here of what we're trying to accomplish, our core strategies and objectives. And I think that's basically what any organization that comes before us have to try to meet in their procurement and their bid process. And if they don't do that, then I guess, it's a no-go. But
I think
Thank you, Tom. Go ahead, Kathy.
I'm sorry about that. I think it might be beneficial, if the board thinks so, to have a medical professional to come in and maybe discuss MAT so that everyone would have all the information that they would need as these agencies were coming, before us requesting money.
Okay, thank you, Kathy. Anybody?
Also, I think we're kind of at the, certainly the beginning stages, and there's so many different, as she kind of outlined, so many different areas that couldn't, in fact, be funded. So maybe the initial stage is really getting education about multiple areas before we're really looking for presentations to fund, to really kind of look at and get an understanding of what the broad community needs are. Will it better help us to then kind of prioritize and then to invite agencies or organizations to present what they are doing and what they would like to do. I think also the fact that the funding stream seems to be unclear in terms of timeframes. For example, if we were going to suggest that people come and present and request funding, are we talking about a one-time amount? Are we talking about ongoing funds? So I think just from my standpoint, we need to kind of be educated about what our parameters are, as well as educated about the different priorities that we are able to address and get input around that.
I agree. Maybe we can, CDAC has a presentation, and I don't know if that might, if we have that presentation, that might answer a lot of the questions that we all have being brand new to this. So With that, I'll turn it over to you, back to you.
Well, I was going to let you know that we were considering inviting someone from EMS, emergency services, at the next meeting, if we have one in October. There was a recent presentation done by David Torcell. Okay. Done by David Torcell for Escambia County, for the board recently, on core strategies that he's imposing, or he's working towards under a grant that he's received. And I think it was actually recently published in the newspaper,
Right.
his core strategies. And so we would recommend that he speak to the board at the next meeting, and we were going to invite him if he's available.
That sounds good.
Okay,
Anybody?
I'll make a note of that.
Okay. Any other questions anybody has? I mean, like I said, I know we got a lot on our plate here. We, like I said, learning to crawl before we walk. And, with that, anybody else have anything to input? Okay. I guess now we could do the CDAC presentation, is that correct?
I apologize. We have on the agenda the Sunshine Law, the voting conflicts, and the ethics presentation. I can make that. There's a couple more things that are going to be before CDAC. They were going to be at the end, but if you'd like to rearrange the agenda, that's possible.
No, that's fine. Go ahead with
Okay.
the Sunshine Law.
All right. So if you look in your books, you'll find that you have the summary of the ethics, the Sunshine Law, and the public records requirement. We got that out of Pasco County, who borrowed it from another county. And Pasco County is one of the counties that has actually, they've been meeting for a while with their board, and we are in contact with them to make sure that we're hitting all the points that need to be hit with this board, and to see what their progress is, so that we can make sure we're staying up with the rest of the state as these funds, while we wait for the funds to come in, which that has been, my understanding has been the question for most of the boards is, when are the funds coming in, and how will we address that? So I'm going to point you to, the first thing I want to point you to is the Sunshine Law. Whenever you have a meeting for the Sunshine Law, which you are subject to, there's 3 things you have to remember, and we're going to, as your assistants and trying to help you through this, and answering your questions, we're going to try to make sure this always happens, but there's some things that you have to do. And so the three things that have to happen: there has to be an open meeting to the public, there has to be reasonable notice of that meeting, and the minutes must be taken and promptly recorded. As you're aware, Ms. Arroyo is not here today, but she is going to take care to make sure the minutes are promptly recorded from the recording, and she may be watching out there today. So she's going to make sure that happens. But when it says meetings must be open to the public, that means any meeting. That means if 2 of you wanted to speak on the dais to each other, you can't lean back. You can't lean back and whisper to each other. It has to be onto that microphone. It has to be open to the public. Anytime that you're discussing anything that comes before this board, it has to be open to the public. You can't send an email. You can't respond. And this is one of the tricky things. Sometimes people put their opinion out there on the internet. You don't want to make it appear that you are responding to someone else's comment. So if there's somebody on your board who's making a comment and you put your 2 cents in, you want to be careful that that doesn't appear that you are making comments on something that may come before this board. And that's a tricky little area now with social media, and we're all trying to get through it ourselves. Sometimes it's on the news. Sometimes there'll be multiple interviews that are being conducted. We don't discourage anyone from exercising their First Amendment rights, but we want to make sure that you don't violate the Sunshine Laws. So be careful when you do that if you are doing an interview. If you have any questions, our office is available most of the time. So feel free to contact us and we can help you through that. So be careful about that. Don't talk about it in the parking lot. Never talk about it amongst yourselves. The reason why Sunshine Law has become so, these areas are so important was because there was deals being made in state government and the public didn't know what was going on. And in 1967, they finally got a law passed that was strict. And as the Supreme Court continued to develop that, there had been a previous public meetings law, but it hadn't been applied except when all board members were present. And then in 1967, it became a law for the state of Florida again, and the Supreme Court started paying attention to it and saying, it's not just when the board is all together, it's when any meeting is held. There's a story I read about, and that I usually do in my full Sunshine Law presentation, about the Everglades. The Everglades were basically won in a poker game by an environmentalist. So I don't know if you're familiar with Pennycamp. There's a snorkeling place down in South Florida in the Keys, and it's named after him. So that's where that came from. He was the one that won the poker game. He had a day when he couldn't lose, and finally the legislature said, "What will it take for you to quit taking the money out of our pockets?" He told him how much he needed, and the next thing he did was go to the legislature. They gave him the money. He bought it and donated it to the federal government for conservation. So when we say not even two people, not over a poker game, not in a fishing camp, no conversations outside of being completely on the record with the public. So I pushed, there's another presentation on that, and we have more time. I'll bring you the whole presentation. It includes all meetings of any board or commission of any state agency or authority, or any agency or authority of any county, municipal corporation, or political subdivision. The board or commission must provide reasonable notice. We've already talked about that. The minutes of a meeting of any such board must be promptly recorded. And according to the public meeting response, reasonable opportunity to be heard came out in 2013. That's Florida Statute Section 286-0114, and that's members of the public shall be given a reasonable opportunity to be heard on a proposition before a board or the commission. So just so you know, that was one of those things I read into the record when we first started, and that's something that will be the responsibility of the chairperson, because although the public has a right to be heard, it also has to be an orderly event, and the conduct cannot interfere with that orderly conduct of the meeting. So while there is a right to be heard, that right comes with responsibilities for the public and on the board for enforcing that. For violations of not following the law, there's a civil infraction, which is a $500 fine, but there's also criminal infraction, which is a second-degree misdemeanor. It can result in suspension or removal from this board, and it can also result in attorney's fees. So that's the Sunshine Law. Voting conflicts. Let's look at that quickly.
Could I ask a question? Before you
Yes,
move on?
sir.
Does this apply to this advisory board having communications with county commissioners?
If it's a matter that's to come before this board or to come before the county commission board, is that what we're talking about? So
Yes.
what you're saying is if the county commission were to contact you and say, hey, I want you to look into this, is that the type of thing? My gut reaction is to say usually it's not when it's two different boards, but because what you're looking into may come before the county commission board, if there's discussion back and forth, I'm going to look into that for you. But be very careful when you do discuss that, because that's not uncommon for county commissioners to say what they're, to reach out to people. Let me look in that to detail. Usually boards can, if they're not going to be on the same boards or it doesn't involve the same material. However, county commissioners may have information that they want you to look into that involves this board. And I'll get you a better answer. How about that? Okay. The voting resolutions, the voting conflicts. Number 8. So there's 2 statutes involved in voting conflicts. One of them is 1123143. I think you can bring it up in the book, on their dice. It's in the handbook.
Which page are you on?
We're going to bring it up on the handbook for you. It's going to be section 8. I printed this out. I don't know where to put it. There it is. Okay. Okay, so you see before you the voting conflicts. The voting conflict statute is 1123145. 43. It applies to all voting officers at the state and local level, and it applies to state public officers. By definition, you're going to qualify under the 1123143 sub 3, which is going to be the next page. You're going to qualify as the local public officers. The definition of that public officer includes anyone elected or appointed to hold office in any agency, including any person serving on an advisory board. Sorry, I stapled my papers in the wrong corner. So when does a local officer have a voting conflict? There are two ways. One is when you can't vote on any measure which will inure to your special private gain or loss. The definition for the special private gain or loss is under 1A. It means an economic benefit or harm that would inure to the officer, his or her relative, business associate, or principal, unless the measure affects a class that includes the officer, his or her relative, business associate, or principal, in which case at least the following factors must be considered when determining whether a special private gain or loss exists: the size of the class affected by the vote, the nature of the interests involved, the degree to which the interests of all members of the class are affected by the vote, the degree to which the officer, his or her relative, business associate, or principal receives a greater benefit or harm when compared to other members of the class. So there's a lot of factors in there, and if you have questions about this as we go forward, today we're doing it, you did an administrative vote determining who the chairperson is. But as we go forward, if you look at something and you feel like that you may qualify, one of the decisions is going to be before the board, it's something that you may be a conflict for you. I want you to understand, you can reach out to the attorney's office. We do have a Form 8B whenever you're dealing with something that involves that kind of special inurement. And we're talking about the special private gain or loss. By the nature of you being on this board, you're all citizens of Escambia County. You all live in the region. So there are things that are going to affect you because you're in the larger class of Escambia County. But you have to look to this category of special gain or loss, and you want to look into those factors that are put forward to see if it raises a question for you. And then the second area where it may affect or have a inure it's a special private gain or loss is when it's going to be one of those specific sections that were laid out where it talked about business associate, relative, or principal. Now, relative is defined multiple times in Florida statutes, but here under voting conflicts, it's very specific to areas to include father, mother, son, daughter, husband, wife, brother, sister, father-in-law, mother-in-law, son-in-law, or daughter-in-law. So it's very specific. It's not, so if you have a question, if it's going to affect one of your relatives, you want to look and see if your relative meets that definition. It's very specific in this statute and much more limited than other areas. And then if you want to look additionally, under category 1A, the principal by whom retained, that goes into, and it's an individual or entity that for compensation, salary, pay, consideration, or similar thing of value has permitted or directed another to act for the individual or entity. It's not limited to one's client, employer, parent, subsidiary, or sibling organization of one's client. So those first four definitions all interact for you to help you get a better understanding of the voting restrictions. I want you to look next at sub 4 within this chapter. No appointed public officer shall participate in any manner which would inure to the officer's special private gain or loss, which is what we discussed. There's a disclosure requirement, and that's this Form 8B. I don't know if it's attached. Is it attached? Okay, and she's bringing that up for you. If you'll notice, the disclosure of local officers' interests first tells you who must file the form on the front, then on the back it tells you the disclosure. And you'll notice that all of these disclosures are related to special private gain or loss, as you look through the list there on the back page. See there under disclosure of local officers' interests. If you have a situation where you feel that you may be biased, you don't feel that you can be fair and impartial, and it's not because of that special interest, there's another section that relates. Is that one in here? It's what? No, just the page. What's the statute? Okay. And that's going to be on the very last page of this section. It's called it's 286012. It's the voting requirements at meetings of governmental bodies. So what this tells you is that a member of a state, county, or municipal governmental board, commission, or agency who is present at a meeting where an official action is to be taken or adopted may not abstain from voting in regard to any such decision, ruling, or act, and the vote shall be recorded. Now, we know that one of the exceptions to that is if you filled out a Form 8B because you have a special interest, a special private gain interest. But the other area is the very last sentence of this, and we do not have a form, but you would have to state it on the record. It says, on the very last sentence, it says, if the official decision, ruling, or act occurs in the context of quasi-judicial proceeding, a member may abstain from voting on such matter if the abstention is to assure a fair proceeding free from potential bias or prejudice. So if we're involved in a vote and you feel like you can't be fair and impartial in your vote, then that's something that we would need to know about. And preferably, I know about it ahead of time. And that's why we encourage you to talk to your attorney, to the county attorney's office, because we can advise you or let you know if it's something you're going to need to abstain, if you need to fill out a Form 8B, if you just need to make the record. And even if you have these conflicts, you can still participate in what's happening. You just can't vote. You just had to make it a record of your position and whether or not you have, you just need to make it on the record whether or not you have a bias or a prejudice. So it allows you to participate. There just has to be a record made before you participate, but you're not voting, okay? And then finally, I wanted to talk to you, and I want to do a bigger ethics presentation because Florida ethics, the county has an ethics statute, or the county has an ethics ordinance, and the state law, there's also an ethics ordinance. So if you go back and you look at subsection 7 within your book, you'll see this is where we've put in the pages of the county ethics requirements. So you are governed by this as a public officer. And you'll see that we've highlighted that definition for you. And then if you turn to subsection B, you'll see where we go through the county public officers and employees and the state code of ethics that you need to become familiar with. I would ask you to focus on gifts. The first one from the state is the 112313. And that's the standard for public officers, employees of the county. So there's standards for the state, but there's also standards for the county. Is that the summary? Okay. And the easier place for you to see this might be within the summary, which is under 6. I'm getting a better book so I can turn my pages. So Florida Statute 112313 goes into the gifts and ethics and standards of conduct for you. And it tells you should not solicit or accept anything of value, including a gift, loan, reward, promise of future employment, favor, or service-based, upon any understanding that your vote, official action, or judgment would be influenced thereby. And then it goes into other areas of unauthorized compensation. So no one can accept compensation based on that same, with the intent to influence your official action. There's restrictions on doing business with one's agency, misuse of public position. So you should not corruptly use or attempt to use your official position or any property or resource which may be within your trust, or perform your official duties to secure a special privilege, benefit, or exemption. The conflicting employment or contractual relationship is, since you're not employed and you're here voluntarily, it's not going to affect you as much. If there's something that comes up and you're not sure where you are, you know, how does this apply to me? You need to just ask. You need to just contact my office and ask. And we've been advising different boards for a while, and of course I always have Allison Rogers at my access, and I can talk to Allison Rogers and see if she can give me a strong answer if I'm still stumbling, okay? There's the exemption for doing business with one's agency is also listed in there, but like I said, you're not employees, so that should help you. That should help as it pertains to you. We've already discussed the Florida government and the Sunshine State, but before we move beyond this, I want you to look down there at number 5, which is the disclosure of financial interests. Have you got that one up? You may have been appointed as an advisory body, and then it talks about the different types of financial disclosure. Escambia County has a gift limitation of $50, whereas the state has a limitation of $100. The county has a limitation of $50. And as far as disclosure, I don't think that you qualify for that, but I wanted to make sure you're aware there's statute in state law about $100. And then as far as in Escambia County, you can't accept a gift over $50. And also, you're prohibited from soliciting gifts. And then, of course, it says there you're prohibited from directly or indirectly accepting a gift worth over $100, but in Escambia County, once again, it's a $50 gift limitation. I can tell you, in my experience, working with different divisions of the state, it's best to walk away from all gifts. Then you don't have to worry about these details. You'll also see in here there's meeting requirements that's going to fall under that sunshine law, and we've already discussed that. We've talked about there's a little more detail on the suspensions, the penalties that are involved in there. And then when it comes to public records, the public has the right to inspect and copy public records. You will not be handling your public records. We'll be handling those for you if there comes a request. We're going to put everything up that we can. We're going to put everything up in front of the public so that they can get that information. Or if a public record request, if it were to come into you, reach out to myself, to Becca, or to Ms. Arroyo, and we'll handle it from there. Just make sure it gets to us so we can handle it. But we're going to try to get everything out in front of the public ahead of time. Like I've been saying, we're going to put that A and B on the internet so it's available to the public, because they do have a right to inspect records, and we don't want to violate that right. There are also penalties for violating that right, and that's going to be on the next page, where it's willful and knowing violation is a first-degree misdemeanor, and a non-criminal infraction would be a $500 fine. So and of course, if you're a government body, there's injunctive and declaratory relief. So if anything like that would come into you, just reach out to one of us and we'll handle it from there. If they email it to you, just forward that email to us. That way it's in public record, and we'll handle it from there. And we'll let you know when it's resolved that we've handled the request. Do you have any questions at this time, or do you want to take a break or anything?
I have one question. So if you're associated with some organizations that provide these services and they come before, there's only 5 of us here. So you need a offset number, odd number, in order to approve something. So like if one of us abstains because of association, because, you know, there's a number of us that's already kind of working in the community with certain organizations. I understand the statute says on a private gain. So if you're already associated or have relations with certain organizations or things of that nature, do we abstain from, if they come before us, and will we have to abstain from that? And if so, we only have 4, how do we deal with that even number?
So you're saying if there's a tie vote, between, it's a 2-2 vote, how do we handle that?
Yeah, like if one of us have to abstain.
Well, first of all, we'd have to determine whether or not you'd have to abstain, and that's why we want you to tell us that it's coming before you ahead of time and it's something you have a concern about, so that we can get on top of it and go through the list and see if this is something where you do have to abstain, if there is a disclosure requirement. Okay, so if you have a situation, when we come to a tie, that may be something where it just has to, I have to look into what happens with a tie. I understand what you're saying, and there is only 5 of you. But first of all, our first step is going to be, let's look to this and see let's see where it is, and then I'll look into ties and see how those have to be resolved. And we can also put that as part of the bylaws, how ties will be resolved. I think that's actually already handled in Robert's rules, but I'll confirm on that.
Okay,
Okay. And, okay, does that answer your question the best I can for now?
okay.
Okay. I'm hoping that everything comes before you is going to be so clear. Unless there's other questions, I'll turn it back over to you, Chairman.
Thank you for that, Christie. I guess next now is a review of the Scamacan resolution. Is that what I'm seeing on the agenda?
Briefly touched on this. There's a term of office requirement within this resolution. You all see that we discussed how you were appointed by the different, how the different membership was comprised. Then you have the term of office and vacancies. It's a term of 2 years. And then if someone has to resign or if someone is removed because they meet the requirements to be removed of the 3 or more total absences, and there's a recommendation by the board that they be removed, then the next appointee would just go back to the person who originally appointed you. So if it was the Board of County Commissioners, Cambria County Administrator, whichever one, that's who would recommend the next appointee. You've already elected a chairperson and a vice chairperson. Of course, this is interim. You'll see in these notes it says that the October of each calendar year, so we'll have to do that next month. That is for a 1-year term till the next meeting in October. And there are no term limits for that, so you can continue to recommend someone for as long as they will take the position. The regular meetings, there's a requirement in these rules, and this is one of those things I wanted to cover because of the bylaws that we need to draft, is there's a requirement that you have regular meetings, but it can be no less than semi-annually. My recommendation at this point to the board is that we have a decision about how often you want to meet. I think we sent out a notice to an email, I believe, came out that said, make sure you bring your calendars, because that's something the vote needs to make a decision on. There's my little piece of paper. So, you don't have to meet every month if you feel like there's nothing that you can resolve in that month. So sometimes what I've seen other boards do, is they've scheduled a regular monthly meeting, and then if there's nothing before them, then they just cancel that meeting with notice to the public, and then they would just cancel that meeting because something hasn't come forward, there's been no changes, there's nothing they need to update. But you can do it, but you have to have at least 2 meetings a year. So that might be something that the board wanted to entertain at this point, so that we can get that into the bylaws.
Okay, anybody have thoughts on the matter? I personally think initially we need to meet sooner more than not, until we get our feet wet and find out which direction we're gonna go. But at the same time, the last thing I wanna do is waste anybody's time, to come down here and not resolve anything, or no issues come before us. I would entertain, right now, why don't we look at our calendars now, and for October, we know we need to meet in October, and then we can discuss frequency and others at a different time. But if everybody look at the calendar and see what you got in October.
And since there's other board meetings that occur, and that occur in this room, if you can give us a range of like, okay, everybody's open the second week of October, that type of thing, that would allow us some leeway to move that into a spot where we could put that. And if mornings or afternoons are best for you, we could move it in there. We might be able to find an opening.
Okay, that's a good point.
Are Mondays a good day for everybody? Mornings?
Yeah, Mondays are pretty good for me in the morning. The 17th, I'm open that day. I don't know how everybody else is on the 17th of October.
I don't have any conflict with that.
I can meet.
The week of the 17th of October, I'm pretty much open the entire week, so I don't know what everybody else, what we give her other days, option days. I guess she's looking at it right now.
We have before the board the calendar for October board meetings, and there's nothing scheduled on the 17th, so I can pencil in, you want it same time, 10 a.m.?
Monday the 17th, 10 a.m., everybody good with that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to vote on that or just want to see if anybody can't make it. These are administrative matters, so you can move them along.
Is there anyone that can't make that meeting? Seeing everybody that can make the meeting, we'll go with October 17th at 10 a.m.
All right, and then at that meeting, is that when you would like to defer coming up with a longer calendar?
Yes, I would like to
Okay.
defer to that till we have a new chairperson and decide on, let them have an input into that. And
Okay,
also, if I could at this time, anybody have recommendations, if they can bring it forward to the October 17th meeting, as far as the bylaws, anything, go review over the written material we have in front of us and come up with the recommendations you have as far as the bylaws go. And I guess, do we need to submit that to your office prior to, for the public records, or can we just discuss it here when we get here?
you can discuss it in open forum among each other. I will draft something for you just based on what I see from other board members, other boards' bylaws.
Please.
And their rules and procedures. There's things that are included in that, which would be the purpose and intent, which is going to be settled by what we have in the board meet from the BOCC. There's going to be discussion of membership, which we already have that information. The officers, that we already have that information. The duties of the officers, which anything that I can put in here that we've already got. So as we go through, we can rule out most of this that comes up. You want to set a deadline for agenda. You want to set a time for when how long people can speak. We had put 2 minutes in there. That was what the BOCC handles. They get a lot more speakers than you do. Of course, if someone is making a presentation, they're not going to be included in that public forum. The proceedings, if you like the way the proceedings are set out, I can just go ahead and add that to your bylaws. We'll add, of course, the 4 things that are already in the bylaws, that are required to be in the bylaws. Let's see. Of course, Robert's Rules of Orders is what's used, and that comes also from I can just structure it basically off of what we already have from the BOCC, if that's what you like. And then we can get that out to you before the meeting, so when you come to the next meeting, you can be ready with any adjustments you want. You can discuss those, and we can add those in. It's easy for me to add those in for you.
Anybody have any input at this point that you would like her to include or review? Okay, that sounds good, Ms. Hankins, if you could do that for us, appreciate it.
Okay, then I'll just, so we don't need to go through this whole thing, I'll just use this for the structure of the bylaws and look to some other boards and do you a structure, a draft for you to review.
Sounds good.
Okay, all right. Then we're ready, I believe, for the presentation by CDAC.
Okay, please, forgive me, your name again, and let you introduce yourself. I'm sorry about that.
I'm Alicia Scrivener, and I'm the CEO at CDAC Behavioral Health Care, and this is...
I'm Denise Manassa. I'm the Director of Community Prevention for CDAC Behavioral Healthcare.
So
Thank
we
you.
have-
Before we start, Alicia, could I get you to give us go over the membership of the board? I mean, who all is on your board now, the CDAC board currently?
The
Just for-
CDAC
yeah,
board or the task force?
The task force,
Okay.
yes.
I knew you would ask that, so I brought it here. Okay. Denise and myself are on the board. Dr. Williams is on the board. Dr. Vanessa Phillips from the Health Department is on our board. Chief Tommy Leiter from the Sheriff's Department. Travis Tompkins from Emergency Management, and Laura Gillum from United Way.
Okay, thank you. And could you supply that to us, if you would, please, the board members?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. And Alicia, also, who is currently on your board of directors at CDAC? I'm just curious.
A lot of the same, some of the same
Some of the
ones.
same people?
Some of the
Okay.
same people.
Okay.
So we have a presentation today, and this is new territory for us too. So I hope that what we have will be able to provide some information for you. I'm sure that it won't answer all of your questions, but it's a start. We'll look at it that way. So CDAC has been around for about 51 years now. Interestingly enough, I was looking back at our history, and in September of 1971, we were designated as a drug task force for Escambia County, so we've been doing this for quite a while. So we are a nonprofit agency, and what we do is try to promote wellness and healthy lifestyles for the community. So some of the areas that we cover, just to give you a little bit of an idea of what we do, is we have outreach programs. Then the main target of our outreach programs are usually pregnant and postpartum women. So we do work with that population. We have intervention services or intervention programs, and these programs provide case management and care coordination for several groups of people. Once again, our primary target population, pregnant and postpartum women. And now we have programs with families with substance-exposed newborns. So we work with that population. Also, we work with families that are involved with child welfare that have substance abuse issues. So those are the two big areas that we have intervention programs. We have prevention programs, which prevention has been part of CDAC since our beginning. And we have some individual type prevention programs where we're working with parents on parent skill training, and then we have some school-based prevention programs. So let you know that we are not just based in Escambia County. We are actually in all of Circuit 1, moving into Circuit 2 right now with our substance-exposed newborn program, and possibly we'll end up all the way over to Tallahassee before we're finished. So we've grown in our 51 years. And then our major program is community prevention here in Escambia County. And with community prevention, we have several different programs. We have some programs that work with 3-year-old children, getting them ready for school and involved in structure is one of the main things there. And we have after-school programs for kids. And then we have the community prevention programs where we have education, information, different types of community health fairs, things like that, as well as looking at social norms and what we can do in the community to make broader changes. So not just necessarily targeting one group. Denise is our community prevention person. And basically because of, I think, that part of our agency or our organization is why we were designated as the Escambia County Task Force, Opioid Task Force. And we have a community or a prevention committee that's already in place, has been in place for several years. Started out as one of the drug coalitions years ago, and we have not taken the direct coalition road as some other counties and some other places have, but we do have our prevention committee that does different things within the area. This committee primarily focuses on Escambia and Santa Rosa County. So with looking at the opioid task force to meet your needs, we just developed a steering committee that just focuses on what we would be bringing to you guys for information about the task force, about the opioid abatement, anything to do with that. So that our main role, as I understand it, and like I said, this may change, will be to provide you information about what is in the community. What are the current problems? What are the current issues? What are the current solutions that are out there? Someone mentioned there are already programs out there. What's there? What's missing? So we will be the information, I hope, the information provider for you, and that would come through Dr. Williams as one of your board members. Is that sort of what everyone understood? I guess, Christy.
I expect they'll be coming forward with presentations on recommendations on what, as she explained, as informational, they'll be supporting the board informationally, and they'll be coming forward with information as it changes and as society, the needs of society change.
So if you have needs, as you identify needs as we go on, hopefully we'll be able to address those needs or let you know what's going on and answer those questions. So we targeted action areas with our task force that would support what you, as an advisory board, would be looking at. Overdose prevention, treatment, pregnant and parenting women and their babies, warm handoff programs and recovery services, and then prevention. So what we're going to do today is let Denise do a little bit of a presentation for you on some of the things that we know are going on in the area of prevention, what we are doing here in Escambia County, just to give you a little highlight. Ready?
Yep. All right. Good morning. So part of this is looking at the prevention strategies. Prevention is seen as a model, evidence-based, and scientific proven throughout the country as something that each community needs to avail themselves because we know if we can stop in the beginning, help community members, children develop skills along the lines of prevention, it is more cost-effective and it's going to help the community in the long run as a whole. So looking at the core principles of what the abatement committee is, expand resources to local communities at higher risk of substance abuse issues and maintain local communities working on youth substance abuse prevention, improve understanding of opiate epidemic and substance abuse disorder among partners and the community with the emphasis on reducing stigma, improve awareness of local safe medication return disposal options that accept prescription opioid among county residents, improve awareness of safer storage options for prescription medication, over-the-counter medication, and other substances to prevent misuse and abuse. So one of the core principles on Strategy 1 is expand resources and maintain communities. We are stronger together as a community, and as we avail ourselves to more and more resources, linking those services can be proactive in what you as an abatement committee and us on the task force are reviewing. So part of what CDAC does, and engagement of all these communities, entities, as we conduct what's called National Night Out. We host this along with our partnering agencies, law enforcement, and this is actually a national event, and we here in Escambia County have been conducting this. This is a way for community members to come together, avail themselves to resources that they may not know about in the community that are going to support the efforts on opiate prevention, and also other resources that they may not know about that is going to support this community. Part of the partnership with law enforcement, it also avails community members the ability to see law enforcement in a very positive, active role where they may need resources and may have a stigma against law enforcement, but this gives them the opportunity to have personal engagement with them in a positive way. So we have our next National Night Out in October, and we will be continuing to conduct this every year. The last few years, due to the pandemic, we have done drive-through, but we have distributed food, and for the community members, we also distribute school supplies for the children. This is funding that we do raise, and so we're able to do that for the community as well. Maybe you all can come out. Some of the other prevention activities that CDAC is involved in that makes the partnership with other agencies and community members very valuable is Family Day, recognizing that families need encouragement to meet and have meals together. It is a proven evidence-based way of connecting parents or guardians with a child. And we know that the more the communication that happens, then communication avails themselves to Q&A, and it lets the children know that they are supported in the home. Red Ribbon Week is another national campaign that CDAC has been supporting for several years. This is where we avail curriculum to the schools district, elementary, middle school curriculum, and it is a way to engage adolescents and young people in the message of really making good choices in their life, just not about substance abuse, but it is a way to make awareness of moving forward in their lives in a positive way. So we've been doing that for quite a few years, and Community Prevention Department supplies the information for that to the schools that they can avail themselves to, and also to the community. Any questions with that? All right, core prevention strategy number 2, improve understanding. So really knowledge is power. As an agency, I think that our knowledge base is professional, and the evidence-based curriculum that we do use and the science-based information that we're able to establish and give to this community is very important. So part of what we've availed ourselves to and what we do at CDAC, and we're expanding part of this, is really educating the community about drug trends and the opioid epidemic. So part of that strategy is lunch and learns. Hopefully we will be conducting more and more of these to faith leaders, business leaders, school nurses. I have just done a presentation, not in this county, to other school nurses, school administrators, and dean. I did present to a school here in Escambia County to the deans and administrators, and one of the administrators said, "I thought I knew some, but I've learned something today," and that's all our goal, to help them understand prevention, but also what's happening with their students that they may not know of in the schools. Community members, engaging the community and let them know that there is stigma, but we're here to educate them and make them aware of changes they may be able to make as well. Their engagement is very important. So family and recovery, reducing that stigma. how to have the conversation with a loved one. That can be a very difficult conversation. So if we can educate somebody during a lunch and learn on how to approach somebody that may be struggling, that is our way of prevention as well, to eliminate some of, hopefully, those EMS calls. Drug trends, the issue of MAT and naloxone or Narcan, how to educate them also on that. I have presented to a business community on this. I think it went really well, and it was an hour of their time, and they provided lunch. So it was a great way for them to be involved and understand really what's going on in the community. If you don't know what those substances are, you can see me after the presentation. This is something CDAC has been able to do in conjunction with other agencies and other supporting governing agencies, community discussions. How do we avail ourselves? How do we reach our community members prevention-wise? We can't help them unless we know what's going on in their lives as well. So they share concerns. It is truly a Q&A session. We usually have a panelist. For example, we have law enforcement generally on our panel. I have had Dr. Williams on our panel. We have somebody with life experiences on our panel that has struggled through substance use disorder. They're able to say, yes, this is real and this is what happens. We have had other EMS on our panels. We've had county commissioners on our panels. We also allow other agencies to provide information during those community discussions. We try to host them in the evening time, so it makes it more accessible to community members. This is something that is recognized across the country, and more and more agencies like CDAC are conducting these. So focus groups. Having a conversation with focus groups lets us as an agency, but also as a committee, try and get to know what's really going on in their own set community. So finding out who those stakeholders are, finding out, for example, who is that matriarch maybe in this faith-based community, and getting with that matriarch and say, can you collect some of your community members that you know and have a discussion about us? Have a discussion about the opioid issue that they feel is impacting their community. Youth involvement is huge, getting college students' input with this as well, and pregnant moms and families. It's really finding about their needs and wants, and how do we collaborate with that, with the community prevention that we'd like to look at as a community. We don't know what we don't know. So another thing to look at as an abatement committee, and what CDAC avails themselves to, is look at national campaigns and how do we as a community avail ourselves to some of these campaigns that we know that are scientific and evidence-based. So one of those that has just recently come out through the DEA is One Pill Can Kill. It's a great way to recognize that we do know that in communities across the United States, there have been substances in pill form that have been adulterated with fentanyl, which is an opiate, and they may be misleading to the public that's purchasing them. And no, that's not something that you would get from Walmart, your prescription. This would be on the street level. Healthy pregnancy is another campaign that we can look at to help our pregnant postpartum women. They may be struggling and they just don't know how to reach out to somebody, and this would be a way to let them know that help is available. Take Back Day is a national event that happens twice a year. This is a way to educate but also remind community members that they can bring back their old prescription medication and dispose of it properly. Social media right now is a great way to outreach to the community, no matter what age someone in our community is. Most people nowadays have social media, and it is a budget-friendly, usually, way to get out campaigns. Now, these are awareness campaigns a little bit different than social norms. So a social norm campaign is a way to look at positive behavior instead of negative behavior. So, for example, the last one, Talk, They Listen. This is a campaign that's put out by SAMHSA, and it is a way to encourage parents to have the conversation about tough subjects, that your kids really are listening. So this campaign is changing the mindset, or hopefully changing the mindset of parents and adolescents, that your parents are really a great resource. If you can't talk to your parent, find a positive adult to talk with. Now, this is a prevention strategy. It may not say don't talk about drugs or don't use drugs, but it's a way to have that engagement in a positive way, so you're communicating with somebody that's knowledgeable and that's going to be supportive. The Natural High campaign, this is a national campaign developed, and it's really about how does an individual look at the positive things that they're doing in their lives. For example, maybe they're on a reading club, and all those entities in that reading club is prevention, because instead of making bad choices, maybe using a substance, that core group that they have is positive. What is your natural high? What makes you fulfilled in your life that isn't substance abuse related? This is about changing the norm of people's way of thinking. And then Mind Over Matter is through NIDA. It's an educational social norm. I view social norm as, so if you go in, and I've had the opportunity to discuss with adolescents, how many of your peers do you believe are using vapes? And they may answer, all my peers are using vapes. Well, statistically, we know that that's not true. So when you enter a social norm campaign, you say, be the one that's not using, because a majority of you are not using opiates. And it's a way for them to view their positive behavior that is really the strength of who they are. Social media also should be used in this regard. So core prevention strategy 3 and 4, this goes around the awareness, Prescription Drug Take Back Day. CDAC as an agency has been supporting this for many years. You see in front of you, there's usually, DEA does 2 days that they support as far as campaigns in October and in April. Here, we're fortunate in Escambia County that we do have some entities like Walgreens and CVS that do 24-hour prescription drug take-back. They have a box. And then Escambia County Sheriff's Department and Pensacola Police Department in the past also have help in this regard on Take-Back Day, getting the message out and providing that information to the community. Also, proper disposal. When our mission really is to remind community members, if they can't get to CVS or Walgreens, they can dispose of prescription medication or over-the-counter medication safely, and this is how you do it. We've done several media campaigns with this. And proper storage. Traditionally, throughout the years, we know that individuals have sought out medication that is still in the cabinets of people. We don't want to, we want to discourage family members from availing themselves, giving prescription medication that has been prescribed to them to another family member. Or that family member may go into the medicine cabinet and use somebody else's medicine because it is there. It is a way to recognize that we really need to safeguard our medication, but also that it is only for you. If it is prescribed to you, it is only for you. And that message is, can be related during some of these awareness campaigns. So for us at CDAC, and I believe for this board and the task force, is really how do we look at this community? We can't do this alone. We have a lot of different supportive agencies here between the faith-based, municipalities, us at CDAC, Lakeview, the schools. We have a lot of entities. How do we collectively look at prevention and the task in front of you and us at CDAC to make a wonderful community even more wonderful that we live in? So that's all for my presentation. Do you have any questions?
Anybody have any questions for her?
Nobody has any questions? Dr. Williams, do you have any?
No questions, but again, I think it's a good overview, excuse me, of really what's happening currently in the community as it relates to prevention. I think that's a really important part of what this group is tasked with, is kind of understanding what is, and then also learning what's missing, where some of the gaps are. And so I think maybe going forward, if not today, we can talk about that in terms of what other kind of supports are needed on the prevention side.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yes, do you all communicate, I guess you regularly, I guess Pensacola Police Department and Escambia County Sheriff are your partners. Are there your like frontline advisors on, the new drugs that's coming into the community, what they're seeing? How do you get your data on like real-time information on like exactly what we're dealing with in the community? Because I know it changes fast. And so how do you get like real-time data on like, this is what's circulating, this is the new drug of choice, or this is the new kid on the block?
So due to our partnership that CDAC has with law enforcement, but also our state partnerships that we also engage with, CDAC does get regular notifications on some of the new substances that we're seeing nationally and also within the state of Florida. So it's through direct communication that through partnerships throughout the years that we've been able to avail ourselves to. For example, I did a training for the city of Pensacola for their staff on some of the new substances that are out due to their governing body policy and procedures, how it affects them. But it's through our partnership that we learn about it. I try my best, and CDAC staff tries their best to keep abreast of what's going on nationally as well, because we know it's going to impact this community. We're not in a bubble here. So if the west coast of Florida is having a methamphetamine problem, we also will have a methamphetamine problem. They have a little bit different venue in the west coast of the United States, but we're also seeing the trends here as well. And we're on the I-10 corridor, so we're unique in that as well. And so we get information from the DEA and from law enforcement on that as well. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, and there is data out there that we're able to avail ourselves to because of the sunshine laws as well.
One question, do y'all ever communicate with the medical examiner's office to find out kind of what the trends are here in our area?
I left off the name of our task force. Dan Schubert
Yeah.
is with the medical examiner's office. He's actually on our CDAC board, and he's on the task force. So yes, we get information from them.
Yeah.
And EMS has a lot of information, so having that information available on trends and what they're seeing out there too. So actually even a dashboard that gives you a daily update of what they're dealing with.
Thank you.
Yeah, and we're also part of other boards that are looking at data, the AHER board, the CHIP, the Community Health Assessment for the Escambia County Health Department. I work directly also, I'm on that board as well. And so there's a lot of data out there. It's just how we house it and collect it, and who's doing the surveys and how are we looking at that data. Emergency room data is different than EMS data. So how do you collectively as a community look at all that data? So yes.
Anybody else? Okay, thank you very much, Denise and
You're
Alicia,
welcome.
for that presentation. Before we end up closing here, you have any more administrative stuff for us?
You haven't had enough? No, sir, that's all we had on the agenda for today.
Okay. You wanted these books back, you said?
If you want us to insert those 2 pages or those additional pages, we can insert those, or if you want to wait until after the next meeting when you have something on bylaws, that's up to you. We can, if you need it, you probably might want to review it, and I can get it from you at the next meeting if you want us to insert those, or you can just, we don't have to insert them for you.
That
it's
sounds
just-
good. We can just wait till the next meeting.
Okay.
And anything else come before the board at this time?
I know she just sat down, and something just came across my mind for CDAC. I know we had a general discussion on this and just being open, since I don't know if this applies to the Sunshine. I asked you all about your hands-on segment of what you do in the community, outside of the advisory and information and the awareness. What type of hands-on approach or actions do you do in the community as far as when you come across or you get cases? So when a person comes to CDAC and they have an addiction problem, they can come and say, hey, I have an addiction problem, or you get referred cases and things of that nature. Then how does CDAC handle it from there? Is it a hands-on approach, or is it just more of a referral approach?
Well, we don't provide treatment, so if someone's in search of treatment, we would try to help them get treatment. We have the program where we work with families from the Department of Children and Families. Those are direct referrals from the Department of Children and Families there. And then any pregnant woman can come and access our services. But it's case management, care coordination, so we coordinate all of those services around what they need, remove barriers from them getting the treatment they need. We stay with them while they're in treatment. They stay with us after they get out of treatment. We don't have it's not like a 30-day program, you come and go. We have people that, 6 months, even a year, working with us. So
Okay.
it's hands-on, but it's not the treatment side of the hands-on. It's everything else, the hard part,
Okay.
actually.
Also, it's about availing community members the opportunity to have the discussion. So we may get a phone call at CDAC that a family member is in need. We're able to provide information as far as this is who you may be able to outreach to, and we know that they provide great services. Also, we have two parenting specialists at CDAC, and that's those wraparound services. In the beginning, the parent may not understand that they are struggling with substance abuse, but then we can avail ourselves to, these are the agencies or a service that they may need. Even in our 3- and 4-year-old program and our after-school program, we're able to engage with family members, and just developing those relationships with those community members, they're more apt to have a conversation with our staff that may lead them in a direction that's positive for the community. That's where the community discussions, the lunch and learns are so important, because after a community discussion, in my experience with them, is usually when we get a family member that comes up and says, my XYZ family member is struggling, can you help? Where can I go? They may not stand up during the community discussion, but we're there to support them with their questions even after the event. Does that answer your question?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you all. Thank you for being here.
I was just going to mention one thing along the line of any administrative or other matters that you want. If you want it brought to our attention, I know you all received an email from me, so you have my email address. Also included in my signature is the phone number for the office, for the county attorney's office. If I'm not available, because I do a number of board meetings, and sometimes I even take a vacation. If you look on there, on that number that's on there, that's the 595-4970, which is the county attorney's office, you can always reach out to us, say, hey, can you run this by Christy? Or if you want to send me an email. You'll notice I didn't provide you how to contact each other. That was by design, because there shouldn't be those contacts between you. If you need something, send it to me or to Ms. Arroyo, and we'll handle it from there and make sure any dissemination goes out to the board without commentary from each other, so we can continue to observe the Sunshine Law.
Thank you, Christy, for that. And you do keep it a secret, because I tried every way I could trying to find out who else was on the board before I got here today, and I could not find out. So anyway, with that being said, if we have no more business come before, other than, you said you're going to try to have the somebody from emergency services here next meeting?
Yes, sir, and if not, I'll line you up somebody else, but I expect that he might be available at the next meeting. I have to check calendars and availability.
Okay, I think it'd be very informative. So, nothing else come before the board? Okay, thank you very much, and like I said, I think we got our plate full here, and we find out how much dollars we got coming and how many programs come to see us, and, you know, hopefully it'll be all unanimous of votes, and we won't have to worry about the ties, so. Anyway, with that being said, nothing else, we're adjourned.